Hi guys and girls, I'm Obsidian Ant and welcome to 3301. This is where I take a look at the news and happenings within the world of Elite Dangerous. Today we're going to take a look at the new smuggling changes, the SRV reveal, the community goal for the gifts for the new Emperor, as well as the details of the new ships for patch 1.5 and Horizons. And on top of that we're going to take a brief look at the news for the Mac version of Horizons. So, patch 1.4 brought with it some massive changes to smuggling. Essentially now, smuggling is far more rewarding. You can get a huge sum of payout. And this is basically because distance now factors hugely into missions. The further out you travel from inhabited space, the more you're going to get paid for transporting illegal goods, whether they be narcotics or slaves or whatever the mission is deciding to ask you to carry. And this has essentially resulted in a mass amount of players running to one of the furthest out stations, Sothis, which is around about 450 light years from the edges of human inhabited space. And because of this distance, the missions do pay out a large sum. In fact, they're paying up to 9 million credits per mission, sometimes more. Now, you don't have to go all the way out to Sothis. You can go to stations that are much closer. There are stations that are around about 150 light years from the edges of human inhabited space. And whilst the closer distance means that the missions here are a little bit lower in terms of how much they pay out, it's still very common to get missions that pay you between 1.6 and 3.1 million credits per mission, and there are the odd ones that pay around about 4 million credits. Now, the big news here is that the missions are also stackable, as in with all other missions, and that means that the larger cargo hold you've got in the ship, the more smuggling missions you can actually take on. In fact, with a ASP with just a 64 unit cargo, it's possible to take on around about 10 to 16 missions, depending on how many units they're actually asking you to smuggle. And if all of these are paying only 2 million credits per mission, you can easily work out how much you're going to get in total. But in many cases they're paying a lot more than just 2 million credits. And it actually really doesn't take very long at all to do these missions. However, there is certainly a risk versus reward involved in smuggling now. With 1.4 there were some massive changes to interdiction, making interdictions a lot harder. One of the factors that plays into this is mass. Mass now heavily influences how the interdiction actually plays out. As far as I understand, the heavier your ship, the harder it is both to interdict another ship as well as evade being interdicted. So if you're in an Anaconda or a heavily loaded Type 9, you're going to struggle with the interdiction process. Conversely, if you're in a small ship like a Sidewinder or an Eagle, you're going to be able to much easier escape the interdiction, at least from the larger ships. I'd imagine a Sidewinder trying to interdict an Eagle, it's going to be fairly even. So what this means is that if you're a Sidewinder or a small ship trying to interdict a larger ship like a cargo ship, you're going to be able to interdict it a lot easier. And that means if you're in a wing, you can probably pull a trader out of warp and try and pirate them. It also means that players in smaller ships are a lot less likely to be interdicted by players in Anacondas. So whilst the payout for the missions is actually very high now, you run a very real risk of being caught. However, all of that said, Frontier have stated recently that there's going to be a new point patch release on Tuesday that's going to contain a number of bug fixes, and one of the things they want to change in this patch is the interdiction process. They're actually going to make it a little bit easier again, because obviously a lot of players are struggling with the new changes. Now, we don't know how that's going to factor into smuggling, but Frontier have said that they will take a look at it, and if they find it to be unbalanced, then they will deal with it. So it's possible that the rewards for the smuggling missions could stay as they are at the moment, but it's equally as likely that they could also be reduced come Tuesday. On Friday, David Braben revealed this footage on his YouTube channel. It shows the use of the SRVs in action, and it's the first actual gameplay footage we have seen so far for Horizons. And I've got to admit, I've personally been very impressed with this. It's immediately clear that a lot of thought has gone into the handling of these vehicles, giving the planetary landings a very solid foundation to build upon. And I think we can have a look at that just one more time there. Now, I'm very much looking forward to using Horizons in virtual reality, but I do have one fear over this, and just look at how these vehicles bounce around and how rapidly the ground passes by. My concern is that this could seriously induce some bad motion sickness. It would of course all depend on how well it's all been implemented, but yeah. Motion sickness is a very real thing in VR, and it's drastically affected by the sort of vehicle or the sort of motion you're participating in when you're using it. We were also treated to some concept art of a base here. Now, one thing that's been interesting about these concept arts of bases we've seen so far is that they've always been on grey-white type surfaces, places that look very much like our own moon. Whereas so far all in-game screenshots and video we've seen have been on brown type planets. So hopefully this is an indication of some of the other type of areas we're going to be able to land on. Now, one thing I do like about this screenshot is that it very much has a realistic type of feel to it. The style certainly seems to aim for realism rather than that of the fantastic. Something else worthy of note here is that on the ground there's no landing pad, there's simply a door for the Scarab or the SRV to enter the building. Although it is possible that there's either landing pads on the top or to the other sides of this building, but we also do know that some of the bases, some of the smaller ones at least, will not have any form of landing pad. Frontier have confirmed that much. In either event, this space looks pretty large, so hopefully this is exactly what we're going to get. This week sees the start of another community goal, this time centred on the story of the new Emperor. An updated Outland article says this: on Sunday, which is Sunday the 18th of October, Arissa Lavini Duval will be crowned Emperor. Preparations for the coronation are almost complete, and the population of Capital is eagerly awaiting the inauguration of the Empire's first female ruler. To mark this prestigious occasion, the future Emperor has invited galactic citizens to bring her gifts in exchange for certain incentives. In a statement, Lavini Duval said, "It has long been a tradition for Imperial citizens to bestow gifts upon their new ruler. For the first time, and in keeping with the inclusive philosophy I intend to cultivate, I am extending this invitation to all galactic citizens. Anyone who wishes to do so may deliver coronation gifts in the form of slaves to Achenar." The request for slaves is likely to invoke the ire of anti-slavery groups, but the Empire has underscored the fact that all slaves, not only Imperial slaves, will be accepted. This means that any non-Imperial slaves brought to Achenar will be reclassified as Imperial slaves, which will almost certainly improve their quality of life. Pilots who respond to the request will be offered discounts on Imperial ships, as well as being granted access to vessels that would ordinarily require a rank in the Imperial Navy. The permit restrictions on Achenar have also been temporarily lifted to allow pilots to deliver gifts to the future Emperor. So, regardless of what you personally feel about in-game slavery, this is actually a pretty interesting community goal. Mainly, for me at least, because it allows you to access Imperial ships that you otherwise would not be able to get. Many people like the look of the Imperial Clipper, of course, and this will allow them access to that without having to get any rank. Now, here's a quick update on that community goal. It was actually completed on Sunday. A whole load of commanders got together and delivered all the slaves into Achenar, reaching the top tier in record time. It was done very, very fast. And this means that all the Imperial ships are going to be unlocked for sale to anyone without rank in the Imperial Navy. And on top of that, all of these ships will be discounted. So once that's active in the game, even if you haven't got an Imperial rank, or even if you are on the side of the Federation, you can head out and buy yourself a Clipper or any other of the Imperial ships. There are also 6 other community goals. Well, probably more like 3 actually, but each of these is divided into 2 sides, so you can sign up for them. 3 of the other community goals centre around the war against the Emperor's Dawn, and these are in Namari, Tabeldak and LTT-874. There's more details of these in the video description below, which will link to the active community goals thread on the official forum. And the last 3 community goals are resist the Imperial offensive, which I guess that means helping the Emperor's Dawn. and again they are in the same systems I just mentioned. So check out the links in the video description if you want to go and get involved in all that. Now, we know Horizons is not too far away now, probably no more than 2 months I would imagine. And we also know that with Horizons, patch 1.5 is coming. Patch 1.5 at the moment is tentatively called Ships, and that means there are going to be new ships in the game. 5 of them I think to be in fact that we currently are unaware of. Actually, no, it's not 5, it's 7. And we now have all the names of the ships that are going to make it. And these are the Imperial Short Range Fighter, which is the counterpart to the F-63 Condor. This ship is going to be CQC only, just like the Condor, although I imagine that it will also be one of the launchable fighters that, just like the Condor, can be launched from ships like the Anaconda and the Federal Gunship. We're also going to be getting the Lakon Killback, a Viper Mark IV, an Asp Scout, the Federal Corvette, an Imperial Cutter, and a Cobra Mark IV for owners of Season 1 and Season 2 of Elite Dangerous. Now, you may notice there's some conspicuously absent ships from that list. One in particular is the Panther Clipper, which I personally thought was definitely going to be a part of patch 1.5. The Panther Clipper is a large trade ship, much larger even than the Lakon Type 9. Now, David Braben did mention not too long ago, I think in one of the live streams, that they're going to be larger ships, larger trade ships up and coming. So I guess the Panther Clipper is still on the table, but it's not going to be a part of patch 1.5. Maybe later down the road then, hopefully early in the new year perhaps. I know it's a ship that a lot of people want to access. Details on the other few ships though are pretty scarce at the moment, so that's probably something we're going to need to wait and see, as with some of the other things currently. Just taking a look at that list again, I'd imagine the Asp Scout is going to be a variant on the Asp or the Asp Explorer that we've currently got, much like with the Diamondback Scout and Diamondback Explorer. Essentially very much the same sort of ships with just some minor model changes and some fairly significant, I suppose, stat differences. The Asp itself is actually a surprisingly manoeuvrable ship, and it doesn't do too bad in combat. So an Asp that is more orientated toward combat would probably not be a bad thing at all. Okay, then lastly, there's news of the Mac version of Horizons, which isn't really good news, and it's no news at all, I would say. People have asked Frontier, can we get an update on the Mac version of Horizons? And they have this to say: unfortunately, neither OpenGL nor Metal on Mac support compute shaders, and these are vital for Elite Dangerous Horizons. We have investigated the issue at length and found that all other options currently simply will not allow us the performance that a game of this size and detail needs. Once Macs are able to support compute shaders or other technical options are available, we will certainly be keen on supporting that platform. So, you know, that is actually a pretty hard blow to Mac users, effectively being told that, at the moment at least, there's no way they're going to be getting access to Horizons and planetary landings. Now, for many people, planetary landings were a huge part of the reason they got involved with Elite in the first place. And the way Frontier have worded this is effectively saying that at the moment there's absolutely no way they can make Horizons for the Mac, and that it's essentially down to another company to make it possible for Frontier to be able to put Horizons onto the Mac. So I suspect that's pretty disappointing news for quite a few people, and I totally can understand that. Not the sort of news those players would have been looking for. Now, Mac aside, as far as we know, Horizons is still coming to the Xbox One at some point in the future, although we have no time frame for that at all at the moment. Right then, that just about wraps it up for this particular episode of 3301. But before I do go, there's one more thing I want to tell you about, and that is another video series by a YouTuber called Commander Gibson. This is an Elite Dangerous story series created by Gibson called Stellar Remnants, and it's actually pretty darn good. I'm just about to show you a short clip from that series, and you can see more details on it in the video description below. If it looks of interest to you, do go over there and check it out. It's very well produced and seems to have a great story to it. So I'll leave you with that now. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.
I'm not doing so great, Patricia. Station security picked me up last night. I was passed out behind one of the local watering holes. I got lucky though. The desk sergeant was a retired commander, so he just put me in the drunk tank overnight instead of putting me through the normal routine of drug testing and prosecution. I don't think he's going to look the other way next time. I'm pretty strung out after burning O over the past couple of weeks. You can see it in my eyes. I guess there are some perks of being a commander with a half melted off face. So, there's the other kind of void, huh? I gotta admit, I hear a call to me. We always talked about exploring Sag A together. Maybe even try a buckyball run. Well, maybe I'll be an explorer yet.
There are literally billions of stars within the galaxy, but only a few of them have stations as close neighbours. Here is Outland City, and it sits around 10 light seconds away from its star. There are perhaps only a handful of stations that have a vista as beautiful as this one, and the nearby planet just adds to the ambience. The local light source in its intensity gives an unusual coloration to this particular station, making it a rarity that few people will see elsewhere within human inhabited space.